He built the business with his hands. His son decided it was his turn to take over and erase him in the process. No shouting, no warning, just paperwork and a locked door. If you've ever been pushed out by family, tell us your story in the comments. Ethan cleared his throat and leaned forward before anyone else spoke. Dad, you're outdated. This company needs new blood. The sentence landed without build-up. No one interrupted him. The conference table was already set with printed agendas and tablets logged into the shared drive. A projector hummed as the first slide appeared behind him. He didn't look at me when he started the presentation. Boxes shifted across the screen as Ethan explained the restructuring plan. Titles changed, reporting lines moved. A new logo replaced the old one I'd approved years ago. The company name shortened into something trendier, stripped of the last name it once carried. On the third slide, the executive chart appeared. My role wasn't there. Someone at the far end of the table adjusted his glasses and began taking notes. Another member focused on her phone. No one asked questions. Ethan continued describing efficiency gains and market positioning. He spoke in the language of growth projections and branding cycles. The words sounded rehearsed. He'd practiced them. I raised a hand, not high, just enough to slow him down. Who holds signing authority under this structure? The question redirected the room. Ethan paused, then nodded toward the legal column on the slide. All contracts route through the new executive office, he said. It streamlines accountability. No mention of family. No acknowledgement of the years I'd spent handling those signatures. A document circulated across the table. A revised operating agreement. My name appeared once buried in a clause about advisory status stripped of voting rights. The meeting wrapped faster than usual. Ethan summarized next steps and thanked everyone for their time. Chairs scraped back. Laptops closed. People filed out with polite nods, the kind given after decisions already made. I gathered my folder and followed the group toward the elevators. The hallway filled with the sound of phones buzzing and shoes moving toward the afternoon schedule. Ethan caught up beside me as the elevator doors opened. This isn't personal, he said, lowering his voice. It's just business. The doors slid apart. A few people stepped in. Ethan hesitated, then added one more thing. You should take some time. Let the team adjust. I nodded once and entered the elevator. The doors closed between us. The car descended without conversation. At the lobby, I stepped out and crossed toward the street entrance. Security waved me through without comment. The badge on my belt still worked. For now. The parking garage gate stayed down longer than usual. A new scanner blinked red when my badge passed over it. I reversed, tried again, then pulled a ticket like any visitor. The arm lifted without hurry. A call came through before I reached the ramp. Mike, my former assistant, said, lowering her voice. They changed access levels this morning. Your credentials won't open the system anymore. When did that happen? An hour ago. It said it came from upstairs. The line went dead before I could ask anything else. At the office, the front desk no longer had my name listed. A temporary sign pointed guests toward a different suite. I walked past it and tried my door. The handle turned. The screen on my computer stayed blank. Email wouldn't load. The shared drive asked for a password I'd never set. A facilities manager hovered near the doorway clipboard tucked under his arm. They told us to reset the space, he said. You can take personal items. What about files? He shrugged. Anything on the network's restricted now. A courier arrived carrying a box addressed to the new executive office. The label covered the old suite number. The past didn't rate a forwarding address. My phone kept ringing. A longtime client finally caught me between calls. Mike, who's my point person now? They told us someone else handles contracts. You can talk to Ethan, I said. That's not what I asked. The question hung there. He waited. I gave him the same answer again, shorter this time. He thanked me and ended the call without warmth. An internal email landed a minute later, forwarded by someone who hadn't removed me from their list yet. Ethan announced the restructuring, praised agility, and thanked the team for embracing the vision. My name appeared once at the bottom, grouped with advisors. The message closed with a reminder about communication protocols. Another call interrupted the screen. "Mike, it's the bank," the loan officer said. "We're pausing the renewal until we confirm authorized signers." "Send me the request," I said. "We can't," she replied. "Your email isn't on the list anymore." That evening I drove home later than planned. Dinner waited on the table. My wife had kept it simple. The television played something neither of us watched. She set down a glass and asked, "Did it settle?" Not yet. The conversation stalled there. Plates clinked. The meal ended faster than usual. No one mentioned Ethan. No one needed to. The next morning followed the same pattern. Calls rerouted. Messages bounced back. Partners hesitated, unsure who could approve what. I answered what I could, careful not to promise anything I couldn't deliver. By the third day, Daniel Ruiz texted an address and a time. The diner sat off a state road outside Evanston. Booths showed their age. Coffee arrived without being ordered. Daniel slid into the seat across from me, jacket still on. "You look busy," he said. "Everyone else seems to be." He pulled out a legal pad and skipped the small talk. "Who signed your major contracts?" I did. "Personally or as an officer, both depending on the client. Do you still have copies?" "Not on their servers." Daniel nodded once. "That matters." A waitress topped off the cups. Daniel didn't thank her. He kept his eyes on the pad. "Has Ethan accused you of interference?" "Not directly. Give it time." A truck rumbled past the window, the place filled with lunchtime noise. Daniel continued. "Any non-compete number assignment clauses?" "Some. Client election most." He set the pen down. "I'm not here to tell you what to do," he said. "I need to see what you already have." My phone buzzed again. A supplier wanted clarification. Another partner asked for a meeting that no one could schedule yet. I silenced the device and met Daniel's stare. "I can pull the files," I said. "When today?" Daniel slid the pad across the table. "Bring me the list," he said. "The contracts you signed over 20 years. Names, dates, terms." The waitress dropped the check. Daniel stood already, moving toward the door. "Don't forward anything," he added. "Print. Copy. Keep it off their systems." I watched him leave, then paid, and stepped back into the parking lot. The phone vibrated again. This time I answered. "Mike, a client," said, voice tight. "They told us you're stepping back." "I'm still here," I said. The call ended without confirmation. I walked to the car, started the engine, and headed home to gather what hadn't been taken yet. Daniel's office sat above a dry cleaner, the kind of place you only noticed if you were looking for it. The sign listed his name and a phone number. No logo, no slogan. Folders covered the table by the time I arrived. Some were mine. Others came from his shelves. Daniel set 2 chairs opposite each other and started without a greeting. "Let's see what holds," he said. A phone notification flashed before anything else could move. An automated message from IT confirmed that my old email account had been deactivated. No explanation, no contact number. Daniel glanced at the screen. "Expected," he said. "Keep going." We opened the first contract, then another. Dates ran back decades. Signatures matched mine. Company letterhead appeared, but the obligations tied to a named representative. Renewal terms favored continuity. Transfer clauses required written consent from the client. Daniel marked the margins, flipped pages, stacked piles. These don't move unless the customer agrees. The third file confirmed it. Then the fourth. A call came through on my personal phone. A logistics director from Indiana spoke before I could say hello. Mike, what's going on over there? They told us accounts are being reassigned. I'm still handling things, I said. That's not what the notice said. The line dropped as his assistant pulled him away. Daniel didn't comment. He slid the next folder forward. By mid-morning, a pattern held. The largest clients signed on with me, not the brand Ethan was pushing. The paperwork spoke in specific language. Authority attached to performance history, not slogans. Daniel leaned back and tapped the stack. This isn't theft, he said. It's continuity. A courier delivered an envelope while we worked. The letter came from the company's attorneys. It set a deadline to surrender intellectual property and warned against unauthorized contact. The tone stayed formal. The implication didn't. Daniel scanned it, then set it aside. They're trying to box you in. How much time? Not much. After lunch, we drove to the storage unit the company still rented on the north side. The lock combination hadn't changed yet. Old contracts sat in filing cabinets labeled by year. Dust clung to everything. Daniel photographed indexes while I pulled folders. Copies went into a separate box. Originals stayed put. No one rushed us. A familiar number rang again. This time a shipping firm in Ohio. Mike, we heard you stepped down, the manager said. We're in the middle of renewal. Nothing's changed on my end. Can you put that in writing? The question carried weight. I didn't answer right away. Back at the office, Daniel reviewed the collected files. Don't promise, he said. Document. We scanned contracts into a secured drive he controlled. Dates, amendments, correspondence followed. Every signature linked to a deal I'd maintained. Every clause told a story of who called whom when something broke. Late afternoon brought another notice. Ethan had requested a freeze on external communications through corporate channels. A copy reached me by mistake. The distribution list hadn't been cleaned yet. Daniel closed the laptop. You're operating on borrowed hours now. Enough time for what to stay reachable. He nodded. Just don't cross their lines. At home, boxes filled the dining table. My wife passed through, read a heading, then moved on without comment. The printer hummed until the stack stopped growing. One more call came in. A senior buyer I'd worked with for 15 years spoke in a lowered voice. Are you still the one I talked to for now? We need to meet, she said. Off record. I drafted a short message and sent it from my personal account, confirming a time and place. The reply came back almost immediately. Daniel's last text arrived as the files finished uploading. Good. Keep copies. We'll talk tomorrow. The receptionist didn't look up when I stepped into the office. A temporary badge waited on the counter with visitor printed across it. My old access card stayed in my pocket. A facilities supervisor met me near the elevators. They asked us to clear the space today, he said. Anything personal needs to go. Boxes lined the hallway outside what used to be my office. A framed industry award leaned against the wall, glass cracked at the corner. Someone had unplugged the phone and left the cord coiled on the desk. The computer was gone. A checklist lay where it had been. A courier rolled a cart past us and stopped. Signature, he asked, holding a clipboard. No, the supervisor said. That goes upstairs now. The courier nodded and moved on. My phone rang as I carried a box toward the exit. The bank's conference line connected with a tone. Michael, thanks for joining, the loan officer said. We need to clarify authorized signers. A pause followed. Another voice joined the call. This is Ethan, he said. I'll handle this, the officer continued. Given the recent changes, we're suspending the renewal until governance stabilizes. Understood, Ethan said. We appreciate the caution. Michael, she asked. I'm aware, I said. The call ended without ceremony. A notification followed account review pending. In the lobby, a junior manager avoided eye contact and pretended to read a message. The building doors opened and closed on their schedule, not mine. An email arrived before I reached the sidewalk. The subject line read, "Termination of authority." Attached was a letter on firm letterhead, effective immediately. Advisory role concluded. No access to systems, no representation rights. A paragraph referenced compliance and brand protection. A message thread lit up next. A supplier canceled a delivery. Another partner asked if I was still available. Someone else sent condolences. At noon, the board met without me. A contact forwarded a summary afterward. The vote cited image stability and market confidence. My name didn't appear. The decision did. By afternoon, the rumor had a shape. A logistics broker texted, "Heard you retired." A shipping manager asked if I was consulting now. The word spread faster than facts ever had. I stopped by the courthouse on my way across town. The clerk at the counter slid a form back when I signed it. "You'll need a case number," she said. "That's coming," I replied. "Bring it when it does." Paperwork went into a folder. Receipts followed. No one asked questions. The line behind me grew impatient. Outside, a contractor I'd worked with for years waved from across the street. He crossed over. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. "Neither did I." "They're saying a lot," he added. "Not all of it lines up. Give it time." He nodded and walked away. Back home, the dining table filled with boxes. Business cards spilled from a drawer. The logo looked dated now. I sorted them into a pile, then stopped. No point keeping what wouldn't be used. A notification chimed. Another contract had fallen through. The client cited uncertainty over authority. No appeal process, no extension. The mail arrived with a heavier envelope. A cease and desist letter followed, signed by Ethan's attorney. It demanded that I stop contacting clients under the company's name and warned of further action. I read it once, then again. The language stayed polite. The intent didn't. A call came in from a customer service director I trusted. "They told us you're not allowed to talk to us anymore," she said. "That true? Under their banner, yes. What about under yours? That's not decided yet." She exhaled. "We need answers soon." The sun dipped lower while the phone stayed busy. Calls overlapped, messages queued. Every response carried weight. Every delay cost something. Daniel texted. "They escalated. Don't reply in writing tonight." Another message followed. "Options narrow when structures close. Think lateral." The folding table in the spare room bowed slightly under the weight of folders and envelopes. A borrowed printer occupied the corner, its tray filled with paper that hadn't come from the company supply closet. The chair didn't match the desk. None of it did. It worked anyway. A certified letter waited on top of the stack. The return address belonged to Ethan's attorney. The wording stayed formal, trimmed of emotion. I'd been officially removed from any decision-making authority connected to the company. The letter repeated phrases about compliance disruption and unauthorized involvement. The signature at the bottom carried someone else's name, but the timing spoke for Ethan. Another message followed within the hour, shorter and sharper. Any further interference will be addressed accordingly. No greeting, no signature line. A client called before the printer finished warming up. "We're putting things on hold," she said. "The board wants stability. Understood. When leadership sorts itself out, we'll revisit." The line disconnected. No argument would change that call. A second number rang through right after. The bank asked for clarification again, this time in writing. Authorized signer, corporate resolution. Proof attached. "I'll respond," I said. By end of day, the officer replied. A pause stretched long enough to matter. "If you can't," she added, "we'll have to reassess exposure." The call ended without a goodbye. I moved through the files one contract at a time. Each carried my name where accountability mattered most: performance clauses, renewal schedules, dispute resolution terms that tied service to a person, not a brand. The language had protected clients from sudden handoffs. It had also placed responsibility squarely on my shoulders. A mistake surfaced without ceremony. Authority had been shared for convenience. Boundaries had been assumed, not documented. Trust had filled the gaps. That worked, until it didn't. The phone buzzed again. Daniel's name appeared. "They accused you formally," he said. "That's a line. Does it stick? Depends what you do next." Traffic crawled along Lake Shore Drive later that afternoon. I pulled into a public lot near the water and let the engine idle. Another client called, voice clipped. "We need assurance," he said. "Our auditors flagged leadership risk. I can meet, not at their office." Name a place. The call ended with a time and a location. No confirmation email followed. Everyone was careful now. Daniel called back. "They're betting you'll back off," he said. "Fear does that. What if I don't? Then you need a clean structure." A notification arrived as he spoke. A contract renewal had been suspended. The reason listed uncertainty in representation. "I don't have much time," I said. "No," he agreed. "You don't." At home again, the printer jammed. I cleared it and fed the paper back through. The dining table held fewer personal items now. What remained had purpose. Another letter came through email, CC'd to addresses I hadn't used in days. The board reiterated its position and requested that I refrain from external communication until matters resolved. The phrasing carried the weight of consensus. The message closed with thanks for past service. A familiar name lit up the phone. Mike, the caller, said, "We're pausing all activity. For how long? Until this settles." "When will that be?" He didn't answer. The line dropped. Evening settled into the house without announcement. My wife set a plate near the edge of the table, careful not to disturb the paperwork. She glanced at the letters and contracts, then back at me. "You eating?" she asked. "In a minute." She nodded and left the room. The next call came from Daniel. "If you stay tied to them," he said, "you go down with the freeze. And if I don't, you build something parallel." The suggestion hung there, plain and unembellished. "That opens a fight," I said. "You're already in one." A notification chimed. Another email from Ethan's attorney reiterated the cease and desist. The tone sharpened. Deadlines appeared. I closed the message and opened a browser instead. The state business portal loaded slowly. A blank form waited behind a login screen. Names mattered. Structure mattered. Jurisdiction mattered. Daniel texted a single line. "Don't announce, just file." The cursor blinked at the top of the page. Required fields stacked below. Entity name, registered agent, address, purpose. The phone buzzed again. A client wanted reassurance. Another wanted distance. Both wanted clarity. I filled in the first line and moved to the next. The printer hummed as another contract finished copying. The house stayed busy with small sounds that didn't ask permission. No notice went out. The submit button waited at the bottom of the screen. Daniel spread the contracts across his desk and pushed a legal pad to the side. The office phone rang twice before he answered it, listened for a moment, then muted the call. "They're scrambling," he said. "That's a good sign." The pad stayed blank. No names written yet, no tally marks, just paper waiting for confirmation. My phone vibrated again. A number from Michigan came through. Mike, the caller, said without preamble. "We're hearing mixed messages. Are you still operating? Yes. Under what name?" "That's changing." A pause followed. "Send me something official when you can." The call ended. Another replaced it before I could lower the phone. A warehouse director spoke next. "We'd rather stay with you," she said. Tell us what paperwork you need." Daniel raised an eyebrow, but didn't interrupt. By noon, the list formed itself without effort. Names surfaced from different states, different time zones. No pitch required, no explanation demanded. They asked about continuity service schedules, points of contact. The same questions they'd asked for years. Between calls, we drove to the Illinois Secretary of State's office. The waiting area filled with small business owners and filing clerks moving through forms like muscle memory. My number flashed. The clerk reviewed the documents, stamped each page, and slid them back. "Processing takes a few days," she said. "You'll get confirmation by email." "Understood." The phone buzzed again before we reached the car. "They're calling a board meeting," Daniel said after checking his screen. "Emergency session. About what client retention." A legal notice arrived minutes later. Ethan's attorney warned of potential misrepresentation and demanded that I cease outreach immediately. The language grew sharper. Deadlines shortened. Daniel scanned it and set it aside. "They can warn," he said. "They can't stop choice." Back at his office, the calls continued. A procurement officer asked for revised terms. A manufacturer requested updated insurance certificates. Someone else asked for a W-9 under the new entity. Daniel answered questions I didn't have time for. Yes, the contracts allow reassignment. No, there's no exclusivity clause. Yes, the representative of record can change. An email thread forwarded from a former colleague confirmed the board's concern. Revenue projections dipped. Clients hesitated. Someone suggested outreach. Someone else blamed the market. Another message came through. Ethan had noticed. The next call carried his attorney's voice. "You're interfering with existing relationships," she said. "That exposes you personally. I'm responding to requests," I said. "That distinction won't hold." "Then file," I replied. She ended the call without further comment. By late afternoon, the first agreement sat ready. A client chose to proceed under the new entity contingent on service continuity. The document stayed short. Familiar terms. Adjusted headers. Daniel read it twice. "This holds," he said. "Sign." The pen felt ordinary. The act didn't. Ink dried where it always had. As the document scanned, another alert arrived. Ethan had filed suit, civil claim, allegations of breach and interference. The timing matched the signature almost to the minute. Daniel checked the docket. "They moved fast," he said. "So did you." Calls kept coming. Some clients wanted to wait, others didn't. A few asked whether the lawsuit changed anything. "It changes the timeline," I said. "Not the service." That answer satisfied most of them. The list grew longer. Names stacked without ceremony. No celebration followed. Each edition carried its own demands. Insurance updates, new routing instructions, vendor notifications. Daniel closed the door to take a call. When he returned, he nodded once. "They're bleeding," he said. "Not fatal yet." A message from the bank landed in the queue. They requested updated corporate documents for review. The tone softened. Risk recalculated. Another client emailed a signed agreement and asked for a kickoff date. Daniel printed it and placed it on top of the pile. "That's your first?" he said. The phone buzzed again. Ethan's name appeared, then disappeared before voicemail engaged. No message followed. I gathered the signed papers and slid them into a folder. The stack felt heavier than it looked. Outside traffic pressed through the intersection. Daniel locked the office and handed me the copies. "Get these filed," he said. "And brace for discovery." The mediation room smelled like paper and disinfectant. A long table divided the space, not wide enough to keep voices from carrying. Daniel arranged folders in front of me without ceremony. Across the table, Ethan sat rigid, flanked by his attorney. He avoided my eyes and spoke only when prompted. The mediator opened with procedure. Ground rules, time limits, no interruptions. Daniel slid our response across first. Complete record, he said. Contracts, correspondence, performance logs. The opposing attorney skimmed the top page, then another. Her pen slowed. These agreements tie representation to Mr. Harris personally, Daniel continued. Clients exercised their right to choose. She looked up. That's your position. That's the language, he replied. A second binder followed. Emails showed internal directives rerouting authority without board approval. Another section highlighted how Ethan had restricted communications while soliciting renewals under a new brand. Dates aligned too cleanly to ignore. The mediator tapped a finger on the table. This raises fiduciary concerns. Ethan leaned forward. That was necessary to protect the company. From whom the mediator asked. Silence stretched. Ethan's attorney cleared her throat and asked for a break. In the hallway, Daniel checked messages. The bank froze their credit line, he said. Effective this morning. Back in the room, the tone shifted. Ethan's posture changed. His attorney asked about settlement ranges instead of accusations. Daniel answered with numbers grounded in revenue history and client commitments. No threats, no raised voices. The session paused again. This time a board member entered late and took a seat behind Ethan. He glanced at the documents and frowned. This wasn't disclosed, the board member said. We weren't briefed on these communications. Ethan snapped back. We didn't have time. The mediator intervened and redirected the discussion. When it resumed, the board member's questions landed harder than ours. Later that day, I stopped by the old office to retrieve remaining files authorized by counsel. The lobby buzzed with unfamiliar faces. Desks sat half empty. A junior manager argued with HR near the break area. They can't just leave, she said. They already did, someone answered. An email notification popped up on a shared screen before anyone noticed. A major client confirmed transfer of all active contracts to my new firm. Another followed minutes later. Ethan stormed out of a side office phone pressed to his ear. They're blaming the market, he said to someone unseen. No, don't put that in writing. He saw me then and stopped short. For a moment, neither of us spoke. A staffer walked between us carrying a box labeled IT. The next call came from the bank, this time to my number. We've reviewed your documents, the officer said. We're comfortable proceeding under the new entity. Send the terms I said. Back at Daniel's office, confirmations stacked up. Clients finalized transfers, vendors updated billing, insurance certificates adjusted names and dates. Daniel forwarded a message from the mediation. They want to talk numbers, he said. Not posture. Another message followed from Ethan's attorney requesting a private discussion to explore resolution. I read it once and set the phone down. A client stopped by unannounced contract already signed. We're moving everything over, she said. Just tell us where to send the next invoice. Daniel shook her hand and escorted her out, then turned back. They're out of leverage, he said. The phone rang again. This time Ethan's attorney spoke more softly. My client is prepared to discuss settlement, she said. We'd like to avoid further escalation. What changed? I asked. Circumstances. The call ended with a proposal to meet again. No demands attached. Daniel closed the folder and leaned back. They see it now. The clerk called the case number, and everyone stood at the same time. The judge glanced at the file, asked 2 procedural questions, then moved on. No speeches followed. No one raised their voice. The ruling landed in plain language judgment for the plaintiff, damages assessed, costs assigned. The hearing ended before the bench warmed. In the hallway, attorneys compared calendars and shook hands without smiles. Ethan wasn't there. His lawyer accepted the copy, nodded once, and left. The docket updated an hour later, Civil liability confirmed. By the end of the week, the bankruptcy notice posted. Chapter filed. Operations suspended. Creditors notified. The press release stayed neutral and brief, the kind that didn't invite questions. A trade bulletin mentioned leadership failures and governance lapses. The phrasing stuck to facts. It didn't need adjectives. I returned to the old office to collect what counsel allowed. The suite felt larger without people. Cubicles stood half-cleared. A whiteboard listed tasks no one would finish. Facilities had already removed signage. The award with the cracked glass was gone. HR boxed the remaining files and slid a receipt across the counter. "Sign here," the coordinator said. "Anything else I asked? That's everything authorized." A former manager hovered near the elevators, waiting for someone else to go first. We exchanged a nod and nothing more. Back at the new office, transfers wrapped up one by one. Clients finalized paperwork. Vendors updated routing. Insurance certificates arrived with the correct names and dates. The bank confirmed limits and sent a schedule. No one asked about the lawsuit anymore. Work filled the hours and then spilled past them. Daniel stopped by with a thin folder and set it down. "They won't appeal," he said. "Assets aren't there." "What about Ethan recorded loss?" he replied. That follows. A message came later that afternoon from Ethan's attorney asking whether I'd consider a meeting to discuss closure. I didn't answer. No reply went out. Silence carried the same weight as a decision. At home, a brochure waited on the counter. Colorado. A weekend course I'd postponed for years. I completed the registration between calls, chose dates, and paid the fee. The confirmation arrived with an itinerary and a packing list. The calendar filled around it. Planning continued without ceremony. On Friday, the final client transfer completed. I sent a short acknowledgement and filed the receipt. The printer rested for the first time in weeks. I locked the office and stepped into the hallway. Lights dimmed on a timer. The elevator took its time. Downstairs, traffic pressed on with its own priorities. The next morning, a delivery arrived with new cards. Name, title, address, no slogans. I set them in a drawer and left most of them there. A neighbor asked how things turned out while checking the mail. "Busy," I said. That answer satisfied him. The night before the trip, I packed light. Documents stayed behind. The phone charged on the counter. A reminder chimed for a call scheduled the following week. I confirmed it and moved on. At the office the next day, the door locked with a solid click. I tested it once and headed for the car. No reason to check the old building. No errands left in that direction. The drive north cleared the city in stages. Messages slowed. The radio filled the gaps. When the phone buzzed, it was a client asking about a timeline. I gave one and kept moving. At the airport, a boarding pass scanned without issue. The gate agent announced pre-boarding. Travelers shuffled forward. A delay flashed, then cleared. On the plane, a man asked whether the overhead space was taken. I lifted my bag to make room. He thanked me and settled in. After landing, a shuttle carried us to the lodge. Forms were signed. Gear issued. The instructor read rules and schedules. No one asked about work. The first climb started early. Harnesses checked. Knots verified. The route climbed in short sections, each one requiring attention. Hands found holds. Feet adjusted. Progress came in increments. At the top, the group paused long enough to breathe and switch lines. No photos, no speeches. The descent followed. That evening back at the lodge, a confirmation email waited on my phone. Another account activated another service date set. I forwarded it to the team and closed the app. The door to the room shut. The day ended without a summary. Tomorrow's plan sat on a printed sheet by the bed. What remained fit in a small bag, a schedule and a set of choices that didn't need approval.